All right, welcome to the Drill Down Insider Podcast. We're joined right now with Shelagh Glaser, the CFO of Synopsys, after an interesting quarter, and what a year for this company. And yet, Shelagh, I feel like the year to come is so exciting also, because there have been so many changes in the last year. When you look back on the last year, outside of changing CEOs, what's the big difference you see, or the big changes that stick out to you?
Well, it's just really the pace of the industry. I don't think we've really seen anything like this. People talk about, is this like the internet? It sure doesn't feel like that. So just the pace of innovation and really the wide adoption very rapidly of some of this new AI, it's exciting. And of course, we serve the R&D person inside the company, and that person is busier than they've ever been, which is great for business.
It is interesting that this level, or this era of innovation, a lot of it really is happening in silicon. It's happening at the chip level. It's not at the network level like you saw in the dot-com era. Mm-hmm. It's not in the sort of application level like you saw when the Ubers and Twitters of the world came to, or even the mobility layer, which really wasn't necessarily about silicon, although all those entailed silicon changes. What does that mean? I don't have an answer. I often ask questions, I know the answer. I have no idea what that means, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I think the computational complexity here is really quite unique. And if you think about, we serve the R&D leader in the company, and so what they're required to do is be on more leading edge capability than they otherwise might have been. So, you see people moving to these advanced nodes quite rapidly, and then you see the need for new standards. I mean, they want the standards even before the standards are written at this point, just because the speed of compute needs everything to catch up with it. All the interfaces, memory, HBM, all these things need to keep up with the speed of compute. And so it really means we have to, develop new capabilities in our software tools. We have to develop new IP, and we have to develop new hardware to be able to service these engineers.
So that brings one of the many things I wanted to talk to you about. So your design IP business, which is about a third of revenues, and if you look at a trailing 12-month basis, the numbers are going up and to the right. When you're looking at a quarterly basis, they're all over the place. They go way up and way down, down 17% on a year-over-year basis in the quarter you just reported. And I wonder if you can sort of describe that business to me in a way better than I have described it to our listeners and viewers.
Certainly. We think about that business. We manage that business on the long term, and we think about that business as being in the mid-teen grower business. And what you see quarter to quarter is what we affectionately call lumpy, which means we're every day.
Good. That's the exact phrase I use. You didn't know that.
So you are exactly correct. Every day we're building IP titles. You can think of us as almost having a factory of IP engineers, close to 8,000 engineers that all day long they build titles, but the revenue recognition is really based on when the customer infuses it into their design. So you can think about a customer is often building their own IP blocks. Maybe they're building a GPU or some kind of engine, and then they're sourcing the interface blocks. So those could be, HBM blocks or communication blocks. They're sourcing those from us. So we're constantly building blocks. So you can see basically the margins going up and down because we've got those, engineers deployed. But the revenue recognition happens when the engineers at our customers pull those IP blocks down and infuse it into the design.
And on a micro level here, does that mean you recognize revenues when they say, hey, we want, oh, by the way, I think of these as Legos. I know they're not
I think
at all
that's fair.
like Legos.
I think that's fair. They're very complex Legos, but Legos nonetheless.
So when they take a chunk or they take a Lego, is it when they put it to you, when they say, hey, we want to access that thing from the library, we want to use that Lego, or is it when that thing that they have used gets deployed into the world?
It's the first stage because we're a part of the design team. You can think about our Lego block, as you are calling it, really getting integrated with their Lego block. So a customer is going to typically employ their scarcity is engineers. So they want to deploy their engineers on the most differentiated blocks, and then they want to source the standard blocks from us. So when they infuse that into the design, which is well before you're going to see that design in the wild, that's still an integration development step. And then, of course, they take that to a foundry and they tape it out and they start making the product. So the revenue recognition happens in that design phase.
So I sit here in the Ferry Building in San Francisco, surrounded by a lot of different companies, by a lot of startups, including some silicon startups, which are interesting. And because I feel like that hasn't happened a lot over the last 20 or 30 years, but it's happening a lot right now. How do you guys see sort of startup companies embracing the concept of creating new kinds of silicon?
Yeah, I think you're right. We haven't seen that in a number of years, but because of really this AI and the need for different kinds of workloads and different, frankly, economic equations, because not everybody's going to be at a data center level. Some people are going to be at the edge. Some people need something that's, very low power to be able to, do the computation at the edge at a much more economical level. So you're seeing vibrant startup activity. And, one of the things that startups need to do is they need to get to product really quickly. So obviously that's a customer set that we service very well because they need the tools to be able to get their silicon out quickly.
Yeah, Positron's a company that full disclosure, that I've invested in, that is a customer of yours, I believe, and they're exactly at that level where they're looking at using some new concepts and some old concepts to really embrace AI in a way that silicon hasn't before.
Yeah, and I think in some sense this is maybe a new era that we're going through. We call it the era of pervasive intelligence, where some of those new design methodologies maybe would have been done in a lab before. They're getting done in real companies that are going to ship real products. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it also is going to be to change the way you sell.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, as we think about AI, we're still in the early innings. We've obviously infused AI into our tools, into our entire flow. But one of the things that I think everybody's starting to talk about is the idea of not just generative, but agentic. And so we think that's really the next big phase. How do we actually help the engineers? Up until now, we've been just, kind of accelerating the flow that they've had. How do we think about maybe even a whole new way for engineers to develop silicon? It's exciting to think about.
Yeah, and I think it's happening right now. I was on the Workday call this week, and they talked. It was a really interesting conference call. I didn't expect it to be so fascinating, although I've been on many of them. That they talked a lot about agentic AI, but agents of AI, that AI tools would do a lot of the work, would see something happen, react to that thing, and deliver a result, in this case to HR professionals, so that they wouldn't have to go through all the steps they used to take, but also trying to manage that ethically and making sure the things that they wanted to have happen, the things that they didn't intend to have happen that could be bad, didn't happen. And it is a whole new world out there. I guess it's a new world for silicon invention as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a few years away from being able to do that because, the bar is so high in silicon. Anything that goes wrong, one tiny thing that goes wrong can, impact the whole chip, change the schedule, change the performance. So there's no ability to have, any bad outcomes. So we're a few years away from that. But again, we think that's the next exciting phase, and that'll change really how the flow happens and how people develop chips.
Well, we think of your company so much as a software company, but I was talking to your team earlier about these systems, the hardware-assisted verification software, or solutions, I should say, hardware, not software, but hardware-assisted verification solutions that you guys sell. Can you describe to me what one of the newest ones looks like, were I to encounter it in a room?
Yes, if you saw it in a room, you might think it's a server. You might be thinking, because it looks like, it's a big dedicated kind of server rack. So you might think it was that, but it's specialized hardware to allow our customers to build a model of the chip before the chip actually exists in real life. And the reason that's important for them is because they want to co-develop the software and you need all the instruction sets that the chip's going to do so that the software team can do its work on optimizing the software. So it allows the customers to be able to speed up their development. So in the old days, you would wait for the chip to come back and then you'd work on your software. Well, nobody has time for that kind of thing. So we're selling to them basically the opportunity for them to have, the software and the hardware, the chip people working at the same pace.
How big a business is that?
We don't disclose the exact size of it, but we have mentioned that it was a record business inside 23, inside 24, and we expect another record in 2025.
So are the rules that if it was more than 5% of revenues, you'd have to tell us?
It's a part of our design automation business, so it's a part of the flow that we sell to customers.
Okay. It's just so interesting. I suppose that's one of the things in the conference call your CEO, Sassine Ghazi, talked about how the AI development cycles have shortened from 18 months to 12 to 14 months in terms of sort of advancing to the next step of a roadmap. And while that's a generalization, I'm sure, is this one of the reasons?
Certainly. I mean, if you think about what, the speed at which AI is moving in the industry, nobody has time to wait for anything. And so one of the things as they are, ingesting our hardware verification, is it's allowing them to, converge designs on both the digital chip design and the software to be able to have all that ready to go at the target launch dates.
And maybe finally, your revenues in the quarter you just reported were slightly down, within better than your midpoint of your guidance, better than consensus on Wall Street, or in line with consensus, depending on whose numbers you look at. But you're about to complete, hope with any luck, this merger with Ansys, and the predictions for double-digit revenue growth this year. So two parts of that. Is Ansys the reason we'll see double-digit increase, or something's changing? And what's going on with the Ansys acquisition?
Sure. So as you said, we were at the high end of our revenue range, and then we beat on EPS. And then for the full year, we reaffirmed our standalone double-digit growth and our 40% op margin at the midpoint and 13% EPS. So that's all Synopsys standalone. With Ansys, we still anticipate closing the transaction in the first half of 25. We're making good, solid progress through the regulatory process. We've announced, we're through the HSR waiting period, and then we've made progress in UK and with the CMA, and we're working with China. So everything's going to plan, and we're expecting to be able to successfully close the acquisition in the first half of 2025.
So Synopsys bigger and better. Great
bigger
stuff.
And better. Solve more problems for our customers.
Shelagh Glaser is the Chief Financial Officer of Synopsys. We really appreciate your time. And one last thing before we get back, we're going to have the drill down bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot about Synopsys. And with that drill down earnings bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot about Synopsys. So we talked about the design IP business and how on a quarter-to-quarter basis it's very lumpy, and it's hard to see how that business is changing, growing, shrinking. Yeah, it was down 17% on a year-over-year basis in the quarter that they just reported. But how's it doing over the long term? Well, trailing 12 months tells you one thing, and then the sequential change in the trailing 12 months. So again, you add up 12 months, and then you look at how it changes every quarter, and you can really see the direction of the business. And the design IP business is still growing. It is trending up, but that growth rate is slowing. So right now, and here's your drill down earnings bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot, the design IP business on a year-over-year, on a trailing 12-month basis, compared sequentially, is now down to 0.2% growth, 0.2%. That's your drill down earnings bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot. And the drill down bite there at 0.2% does indeed tell us that the design IP business is slowly getting implemented, maybe more slowly, I think maybe because of the dramatic rate of change for these design tools being put to work. But I think with all the work being done in AI and all the surrounding systems, that number's probably going to turn around and accelerate in the near future. Thanks for checking out this episode of Drill Down Insider with Shelagh Glaser. We enjoy talking to her quite a bit, such an interesting company. Check out all of our interviews and all of our Drill Down earnings and Drill Down Insider and Drill Down video webcasts, podcasts, I don't know, whatever you want to call these things. We're doing these for your enlightenment and entertainment. Hope you enjoy these. And follow us on all these social media channels, including Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, YouTube Shorts, and yes, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where you can find me as @CoryJohn and @DrilledOnPod and all those other places. I'm Cory Johnson.